What if I told you that two simple words have been weaponized to steal your divine birthright? After studying comparative linguistics and ancient texts for over a decade, I discovered that powerful institutions have manipulated language itself to disconnect you from your true spiritual power. You're about to discover how the subtle difference between resurrection and reincarnation represents one of history's greatest linguistic deceptions. Have you ever wondered why different spiritual traditions seem to contradict each other on such fundamental concepts? Why some speak of resurrection while others teach reincarnation? The answer isn't theological, it's linguistic manipulation designed to fragment your understanding of divine truth. In the next 20 minutes, I'll reveal the 3 specific word manipulations that stole your spiritual power, and give you the exact ancient techniques to reclaim your divine birthright today. By the end of this revelation, you'll understand why ancient mystics guarded these linguistic secrets so carefully, and why modern spiritual seekers remain confused and powerless. But here's what they don't want you to know. The words resurrection and reincarnation weren't originally different concepts at all. They were describing the exact same divine process, just in different languages. The separation happened by design, creating artificial divisions that serve institutional power, not spiritual truth. Let me show you the first word deception that will blow your mind, starting with how resurrection was deliberately separated from its twin concept. The word resurrection comes from the Latin resurrectio, which literally means arising again. The prefix re means again, and surgere means to rise. Simple enough. But here's where it gets fascinating. The concept wasn't talking about physical bodies rising from graves. That interpretation came much later. In ancient mystery schools, rising again referred to consciousness ascending to higher dimensions of awareness. It was about the soul's journey through multiple levels of existence, not a one-time physical event. The Greek mysteries spoke of anastasis, which carries the same meaning, a standing up again, a restoration to a higher state. But wait, here's something they're hiding about this that will shock you. The Egyptian mysteries at the Temple of Karnak taught initiates that consciousness could rise again through multiple forms of experience. When the high priest would guide an initiate through the death and rebirth ceremony, they weren't preparing them for physical resurrection. They were teaching them that their divine consciousness was eternal and could ascend to any level of awareness. Now let me show you exactly how this connects to your life right now. Every time you feel spiritually confused or powerless, you're experiencing the direct result of this linguistic manipulation. They separated these concepts to make you choose sides, instead of recognizing your complete divine nature. Now let's examine reincarnation, and here's where the deception becomes crystal clear. This comes from Latin reincarnatio, meaning entering flesh again. The prefix re means again, in means into, karo means flesh. On the surface, this seems different from resurrection. But here's the key insight that changes everything. Hold on. Before we go deeper, let me show you proof this affects your life right now. When the early Gnostic text called the Gospel of Thomas was discovered at Nag Hammadi in 1945, scholars found Jesus teaching his disciples about both concepts in the same conversation. In saying 22, he tells them they must be born again to enter the kingdom, while in saying 50, he speaks of the soul's journey through multiple forms. These weren't contradictions, they were comprehensive spiritual education. Which leads us to discover that both concepts originally described the same cosmic process. Ancient wisdom recognized that consciousness moves through various states and forms. Sometimes this meant ascending beyond physical form entirely. Sometimes it meant returning to physical experience for continued learning. These weren't competing ideas, they were complementary aspects of the soul's eternal journey. This next part is going to make you angry when you realize what they've done. The artificial separation began in the early centuries of institutional Christianity. Political and religious authorities needed clear doctrinal boundaries to maintain control. Multiple paths to divine understanding threatened centralized power. So they took the beautiful unified concept of consciousness evolution and split it into competing camps. Here's the smoking gun evidence that will prove this conspiracy beyond doubt. In the earliest Christian writings, before institutional editing, you find both concepts used interchangeably. The Gnostic texts like the secret book of John, which the church later suppressed, speak freely of souls rising again through multiple experiences and forms. These weren't contradictions. They were comprehensive spiritual teachings describing your complete divine potential. But here's what shocked me most. This same manipulation is happening in science, politics, and psychology. They use the same technique of taking unified concepts and creating artificial divisions to maintain control over your understanding. But wait, there's more to this puzzle that most people will never discover. When you examine mystery schools from Egypt, Greece, India, and Tibet, you discover they all taught the same fundamental truth. Consciousness is eternal and evolves through various states of being. The specific form, whether ascending beyond the physical or returning to it, depended on the soul's needs and karma. Let me give you a specific example that will make this crystal clear. In the ancient Egyptian mystery schools at Dendera, initiates would undergo the death of Osiris ceremony. They would lie in a sarcophagus for 3 days while their consciousness was guided through the afterlife realms. When they resurrected on the 3rd day, they had experienced both the ascension of consciousness beyond physical form and the choice to return to embodied existence for continued service. This wasn't resurrection or reincarnation. It was the complete divine process. The Greek mysteries of Eleusis revealed both the soul's ascension to higher realms and its cyclical return to physical form. These weren't conflicting teachings. They were complete spiritual education. Initiates learned that their consciousness could rise to unite with the divine while also choosing to return for continued learning and service to humanity. But wait, before you think this is just Eastern philosophy, here's the Western connection that will blow your mind. In ancient India, the Vedic traditions understood this perfectly. They spoke of moksha, the soul's final liberation from the cycle of rebirth, alongside detailed descriptions of reincarnation itself. Both were part of the same cosmic process. Liberation wasn't the opposite of reincarnation. It was its ultimate fulfillment. I'm about to show you something that will change how you approach every spiritual practice. The Bhagavad Gita describes Krishna teaching Arjuna about the eternal soul that never dies, while also explaining how consciousness moves through different forms. In chapter 2, verse 22, it says the soul puts on new bodies like a person puts on new clothes. But in the same text, it describes the soul's ultimate union with divine consciousness that transcends all physical form. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, and this is why they were so afraid of this knowledge becoming widespread. The separation of these concepts served specific institutional purposes. By making resurrection exclusive to one tradition and reincarnation to others, religious authorities could claim unique access to divine truth. This created spiritual monopolies that kept seekers dependent on external authorities rather than recognizing their own divine nature. But the linguistic evidence goes even deeper than you might imagine. In Aramaic, the language many believe was spoken by historical spiritual teachers, the concepts we translate as resurrection and reincarnation share common roots. They describe consciousness moving between states of being, sometimes ascending, sometimes returning, always evolving toward greater divine realization. Here's a secret they tried to destroy that proves this. The Dead Sea Scrolls contain a text called the War Scroll, which describes the Sons of Light as beings who have mastered both the ability to ascend beyond physical form and the choice to return for spiritual warfare against ignorance. This wasn't about choosing between paths, it was about mastering your complete divine capabilities. This brings us to the most important revelation that literally changes everything you thought you knew. The original spiritual teachings weren't about choosing between resurrection or reincarnation. They were about understanding your consciousness as eternal, divine, and constantly evolving. Whether your next step involves ascending beyond physical form or returning to it, the goal remains the same: conscious union with divine truth. Here's the profound implication that will make you unstoppable once you understand it. When you understand that resurrection and reincarnation are linguistic variations of the same cosmic principle, the artificial walls between spiritual traditions crumble. You're no longer limited to one path or interpretation. You reclaim your birthright as a divine being capable of all forms of spiritual evolution. This is where ancient wisdom gets profound, and I want you to really feel this shift happening in your awareness right now. Mystery School initiates understood that consciousness itself is the divine spark within you. Whether it rises to higher dimensions or incarnates into new forms, it remains eternally connected to Source. The process is always resurrection, a rising again to greater awareness and power. The implications of this are staggering. You've been taught to see these concepts as mutually exclusive, forcing you to choose sides in an artificial spiritual war. But the truth is, your consciousness is capable of both ascending beyond the physical and choosing to return for continued experience and service. You're not limited by theological boundaries created for institutional control. What I'm about to show you isn't just spiritual theory. Modern neuroscience is proving it. Quantum physics actually supports these ancient insights. Consciousness appears to be fundamental to reality itself, not produced by physical matter. This means your awareness, your divine essence, can indeed exist independently of your current physical form, while also being capable of engaging with multiple physical experiences. And remarkably, the archaeological evidence keeps mounting to confirm this unified understanding. Recently discovered texts from Nag Hammadi, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and Tibetan manuscripts all describe consciousness evolution using language that encompasses both resurrection and reincarnation concepts. The division was artificial, imposed later for political and religious control. Notice how different you feel just understanding this truth. Can you feel how this connects to your own spiritual confusion? This is why you felt that nagging sense that something is missing from your spiritual understanding. If you're feeling frustrated by conflicting spiritual teachings, this is exactly why. So what does this mean for you personally? First, you can stop choosing between spiritual traditions based on their position on resurrection versus reincarnation. These concepts aren't contradictory. They're complementary aspects of your divine nature. Second, you can reclaim your power as a conscious being capable of all forms of spiritual evolution. Here's your practical application that will transform your daily spiritual practice. Begin recognizing that your consciousness right now is divine, eternal, and infinitely capable. Whether your soul's journey involves ascending to higher dimensions or choosing to return for continued service, you're participating in the same sacred process the ancients called resurrection. Start practicing this awareness daily. Meditate on your consciousness as divine spark, temporarily expressing through your current form, but not limited by it. Feel your connection to the eternal source that ancient wisdom teachings recognized as your true identity. This is resurrection consciousness, awareness of your divine nature, constantly rising to greater truth. Imagine you're in an ancient mystery school right now. Feel how the energy builds as you realize your consciousness can rise to any level of awareness you choose. You are not bound by the limitations they've tried to impose on your spiritual understanding through language manipulation. Reclaim the language of your spirituality. When you hear resurrection, understand it as consciousness rising to higher awareness. When you encounter reincarnation, recognize it as consciousness choosing continued experience for growth and service. Both describe your divine potential in action. Break free from the artificial limitations that linguistic manipulation has imposed on your spiritual understanding. You are not bound by institutional interpretations designed to keep you dependent on external authorities. Your consciousness is divine, eternal, and capable of all forms of spiritual evolution the ancients described. Let me leave you with this final truth that will set you completely free. The greatest secret the mystery schools guarded wasn't complex ritual or hidden knowledge. It was the simple recognition that your consciousness itself is divine. Whether it rises beyond physical form or chooses to return to it, you remain eternally connected to Source. This is the resurrection of your true spiritual power. The wordplay that stole your divinity can be reversed when you understand this fundamental truth. When you understand that resurrection and reincarnation describe the same cosmic process from different perspectives, you reclaim your birthright as an infinite spiritual being. You are not limited by theological boundaries or institutional interpretations. Your spiritual awakening starts with reclaiming these stolen concepts. Begin seeing resurrection and reincarnation as complementary aspects of your divine evolution, not competing doctrines. Feel your consciousness as the eternal divine spark that can rise to any level of awareness and choose any form of experience for continued growth. The ancient wisdom is still here, waiting for you to recognize it. Your divinity was never stolen. It was only hidden behind linguistic manipulation. Now that you see through the deception, you can reclaim your power as the divine, eternal, infinitely evolving consciousness you've always been. If this revelation has awakened something in you, if you can feel your divine power stirring, then subscribe right now to reclaim the rest of your stolen spiritual inheritance. Click that red subscribe button because this is just the beginning of your liberation. Join over 50,000 awakened souls who've already reclaimed their spiritual sovereignty. Tell me in the comments, which spiritual tradition were you raised in, and how does this revelation change your understanding? Your awakening story could help thousands of others break free from this same linguistic manipulation. Hit that notification bell because in the next video, I'm exposing 7 more weaponized words that keep you spiritually enslaved. Words you hear every day that are designed to make you forget your divine nature. Plus, I'm revealing the ancient technique mystery schools used to reverse this linguistic programming in just 21 days. Don't let their manipulation continue another day. Your consciousness is divine, eternal, and infinitely powerful. The time to reclaim your birthright is now.